This event is hosted by what I'm going to call the 6 a.m. group, and there's some special ties here. Typical of the 6 a.m. group, every time we meet, we start with prayer. And so, Mr. Mike Cooper, Pastor Cooper, could you please lead us in prayer?
Please bow with me. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this night that we can come together to welcome Kevin into this race and to encourage him to send off some men to their duties this Monday, that you would be with them. We ask you to watch over Zach, and we ask you to watch over Lynn and the many people going back to service for the state of Iowa. Tonight we want to think of Kevin and what he's representing. We ask that he represents you first and foremost, and then our state, and we ask him to represent truth. Father, we're here tonight to encourage, to question, and to be there to stand behind him every step of the way. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
And our next item of business, we have a real treat. We're going to have a pledge of allegiance to the flag. It's going to be led by Mr. Sam Virgil, Kevin's son. You all please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Kevin's son, Sam. We're going to start and hear from our representatives. Mr. Deacon, here you are. This is Zach Deacon, representing District 5 in the Iowa House of Representatives. That one is great. Thanks, Zach.
Am I on? Good? Definitely on. Okay. So first of all, thanks for showing up, being a good citizen. Thanks for being a good citizen of our state, wanting to be informed. So tips to you guys on that. Thank you for letting me speak first. I'm not going to be sticking around for too much longer. My wife's clerking for me this year. She's got clerk training tomorrow, so that means I'm on dad duty tomorrow morning, which means I got to be in Des Moines tonight. And so after this, I'm leaving for Des Moines, so thank you for just letting me talk briefly first. Little housekeeping thing for me personally. I know tonight's not my event, but I do have a signature sheet back in there. If y'all live in O'Brien County, I'd love to get your signature. It doesn't mean you're voting for me specifically necessarily, but just so I can be on the ballot again. We are going to be running for re-election in 2024 for the District 5 seat. And so we'd love to have your support, or at least your signature, so we can be on the ballot. If you're not from O'Brien County, there'll be a sheet at your local caucus. So I would just say, first and foremost, yeah, be praying for our state. I mean, obviously, we're in the news. Anybody has been paying attention at all to Perry, Iowa this morning? I was in contact with some of my coworkers down there, and yeah, let's just be lifting our own state up in prayer, especially the Perry community, and let's not politicize something that's super, super tragic. Let's just be there for them. Let's support them and the folks that were injured. And that's all I'll say with that, but just please be praying for them. I would just say thanks to Kevin for sticking your neck out there. This is not an easy thing. I think you got a lot of support here, if not people who are really interested in you. So I really, really just want to encourage you to be yourself, be who you are. Don't fluff. I mean, Iowans, I think we're first in the nation caucus because we're really good at discerning candidates. And so I hope people are willing to give you a shot to hear you out. I know that we'll be supporting you, and we look forward to you doing your best. Yeah, I think that we all need to be honest with ourselves about who's running and who's representing us in Washington, D.C. I don't know where Chuck is at. Oh, he's right back there. I know one of the things that him and I had gone back and forth with when I was first running, and this is true of myself every day that I'm in office, but the days of doing nothing are over. The days of doing nothing are over. Our country is circling the drain, and it's going to take a bunch of concerned citizens to get it back. We can't stand idly by and do nothing. And so I hope that Kevin is a guy we can get behind. I hope he's a guy that will lead us in the right direction as far as Washington, D.C. I'm not going to talk too much about him. This is his event, and I'll let him do that. But be willing to hear people out. Be willing to discern, because we need good people in Washington if this country's going to turn around at all. So again, thanks for being involved. I appreciate you being here. I'm an O'Brien County guy, so it's good to see good support for O'Brien County. I know there's some Osceola County folks here, so don't give me a hard time about that. But thanks for showing up and being involved, because we desperately, desperately need American citizens to be involved. So stay involved. Thanks.
And next we have State Senator Lynn Evans. He represents District 3 in the Iowa Senate. Lynn is from several places, but currently you are, he was in education,
Yep.
currently in Alta.
Aurelia.
The Warriors. Thank you, Lynn.
My wife's from Alta. She's from the other side of the tracks. You know, I had a bunch of prepared notes, so if I ramble a little bit, forgive me. You know, with the events that happened this morning, things kind of changed and put stuff in perspective a little bit. And I think we should maybe take a moment of silence and just think about and pray for the people prepared. Thank you. I'm not going to go into a lot, but you know, as a former school administrator, that's your worst nightmare. First time I met Kevin was at an event in Primgar, and specifically we were talking about pipeline issues. His son was there. His son actually fact-checked me on something, so which was cool. And the more I had an opportunity to talk on the side with Kevin, the more interested he became in the issue of not just the CO2 pipelines, but the whole issue of property rights and constitutionality of it. And then he began writing about it. The guy's a fabulous writer if you ever read his articles. And then the next thing I know, I'm listening to WHO and he's on the radio. So this guy rose pretty quickly and stands pretty firmly behind what he believes in. And he really researched the topic. And because of that, it actually forced me into researching it a little more as well. And Carlos and I, wherever Carlos is, started talking about that issue and went back and forth a little bit. And the whole idea of the use of eminent domain is around public use, which we've talked about. Okay. And then that topic's being muddy, even though it's not for public use. But the other part is convenient and necessary. And it's not necessary. So I think I got Carlos thinking on that one a little bit. There are other alternatives. If you want to go down the road capturing carbon dioxide, I don't necessarily agree with the science behind it, but if that's the road you want to go down, you can capture right on site. The technology already exists. It takes about 10 acres of ground. If every ethanol plant that has signed up to be on one of the pipeline projects was to build on site their own facility, the total cost would be roughly the same as building a pipeline, and those facilities are eligible for the tax credits. I'm not on board with the tax credits either. But if you want the money grab, it's there for you without taking someone's land. Which therefore, my feeling is it's not necessary. And I'm guessing that you're going to hear this also from others when they speak. So, you know, as we go back down to the Capitol, one of the things I'm hoping to continue the discussion on is the use of eminent domain. Not just for this specific project or projects, but however the IUB rules on this, it's going to have a far more reaching effect than just carbon capture pipelines. I mean, think about it. If they say that a private entity for private use can come in and say, we want to use your property, what's to say they can't come and say, we want to use your backyard to put up the Casey's? Nothing against Casey's. I stop Casey's every morning, but you understand the analogy there. Okay? So that's one of the goals I have when I return back down now. It's been extremely difficult to get that to the Senate floor, but I think we're gaining momentum that at least that conversation can continue. And with that, this is not my event, and I am not running this year. You're stuck with me for another 3 years. So I would like to turn this over to the people who you really came to see. You know, you look around the room though, I mean, we're in Geza, Iowa. I'm sure when Carlos said, you're gonna have a forum in Geza? Yeah, this is gonna work. Look around, I mean, what is it? There's getting close to 100 people here. The place is packed. So thank you very much for showing up. And I'm looking forward, I'll stick around if you want to chat afterwards. And I think there's probably going to be a question and answer time, so we'll get grilled a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Steve King. He's had the distinction to represent Iowa and Iowans for a total of 24 years. And like Kevin, who said he was an outsider, you were too 24 years ago, Steve King. I remember that. And so Congressman King was with the United States House from Districts 4 and 5, 2003 to 2021. And prior to this, State Senator King represented Iowa Senate District 6 from 97 to 2003. We're so happy you're here, Steve King. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I look around here and I see a lot of friendly faces, and I know you've been in the trenches for a long time too, or I wouldn't recognize so many faces in this room. And the second thing I think about is I've done a lot of presidential events here over the last couple of months, and there's a good number of presidential candidates that'd like to be able to draw a crowd like this one. This is bigger than many that I have seen. And this place, I'm watching them unfold chairs over there and bring them in, and I looked in there about a half hour earlier and I thought, is this place going to be too big for our group? No, there's not enough chairs for the people that are standing in the back. There's a few scattered around there, but this is a great turnout, and that says something. It says to me that there's poised to be a groundswell for Kevin Virgil. And part of it's because of Kevin, and part of it's because of what the other guy hasn't done, and part of it's because of what the other guy has done. But I know that Kevin can talk to you about his resume, and hopefully he does, but he's a little too modest to say all this himself. And so I sat down with him, and we got to know each other mid-last summer, I suppose, and then we had a meeting at Where Else Pizza Ranch. And as things unfolded, he'd written a really good op-ed that was published in the Des Moines Register, and it's called Rich Men from Des Moines. It played off of that song, The Rich Men from North of Richmond. And boy, did that hit what was going on here. And that's when I knew, and I think Iowans knew, that Kevin Virgil understands this issue and understands this area. So what I want to say about his resume is this: that I went out there to the place and looked, and there's that sign in steel that hangs up there from the chain that says Virgil Homestead, 1875. So I did the math. I don't think Kevin actually knew how many grapes you had to have to get to the one that actually turned the first sod, but it's, in my calculation, not Jefferson's measure of a generation. He said 19 years. I used 25, and I got to your great-great-great-grandfather homesteaded that ground, and you grew up on that farm. And you can't get roots any deeper than that unless you're a Native American. And that's the piece that we know this. We're part of this land. And our roots go down in it, our feet go down in it, our sweat drips on it, our blood drips into it also. This land means something to us. It's beyond a paycheck, it's beyond somebody's value, beyond the value of somebody's investment. They look at it and say, well, I can buy or blow my way through this land. But not when you're 5 and 7 generations on that land. like Kevin is. And not when you've taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, like Kevin has, I don't know how many times, I know every time he meant it. When you put on a uniform and you take that oath to the Constitution, then that means that you're dedicated to defending that Constitution up to and including your life if necessary. And I've been trying to remember back, have we had anybody represent the 4th District that had put on a uniform and served our country in that fashion? I can remember most of those folks back away, but I can't come up with one. And that's one piece that's about time, but not so much because of that label, but because of the dedication and the patriotism he's demonstrated for all of his adult lifetime and probably before. West Point, I've made a lot of nominations to West Point, the candidates, and also the other academies. And we got to pick the cream of the crop from all the way across 750,000 people or more, 39 counties or so, and the cream of the crop. And here would come these kids, and I call them kids, and they're young men and women, that would have a 4.0 grade point average and an ACT score of in the 30s somewhere. They'd be busy in all kinds of extracurricular activities and sports activities. You look at that and you think, how do I choose between them? Well, then you do the interview and you find out there's a little bit of difference and you choose the best ones. There's no question in my mind, Kevin Virgil is the best candidate to go to West Point out of this area. And so that's West Point. And out of there, the 82nd Airborne. You don't get to do all that on the ground, I hear. Sometimes you got to jump out and sail a little bit like a flying squirrel. And then from there to the Rangers, and that's got more and more elite along the way. And I don't know if Kevin's going to say this. I'm surmising from things when I say this, but I want to try to characterize it and give him an opportunity to rebut it if it's not accurate. And that is that I know that Kevin came very close to being in the Twin Towers on September 11th, 2001. All of us remember where we were that day, but I don't know if any of us were that close to being a piece of that ashes. And it's my understanding that after that, that's when Kevin went out. How can I defend my country again? How can I settle this score? And joined the CIA and operated behind the scenes, traveled to more than 70 countries around the world, multiple languages, understands the culture, the politics, the history, and the military of multiple countries around. And so I see that, and I've been to a good number of those countries too, but I understand what kind of a background that is. And you have foreign policy responsibility in the United States Congress. And so his resume is tremendous, and I don't know anybody else that matches up to that. And we can be really proud that here, right out of the northwest corner of Iowa, almost the best strategic place for anybody to grow up in, to have the family and the neighbor network to run for Congress and represent we the people. And that's what we're really looking for, is someone who understands who we are, someone that will work and show dedication. You never have to wonder if Kevin Virgil is going to go slack on the job. Look at his resume, and that'll tell you that. But we have a little problem finding out what our current congressman is actually doing. And here's what I hear, and I'm not everywhere, but I travel around quite a lot and do a lot of events, and I hear this, that he's invisible. The county chairs say, well, we never know when he's in the county or when he isn't. He's doing his full grassley of 39 counties, but he'll drop into a small business somewhere, do a little photo op and leave, and they don't even know he's in town. Not opportunities to have anything. And doesn't take questions, and so invisible, and if you don't meet with your constituents and listen to their criticism, that means you're also afraid of them. And you just cannot be invisible and afraid of your constituents and think you're going to represent the best people in America living right here. And this is the most valuable, the most important congressional district in all of the United States of America. One thing, because we're faithful, God-fearing people, and we care about our families and our roots, and we take care of our neighbors and our friends. And when a tornado comes through, we're right there with our chainsaws and our pickups and our loaders. And what happened to me, I went out to get my stuff out of the garage, and my boys had been there and raided me for all my tools on the way to Mapleton one morning. That's what happens in Iowa. That's who we are. And so there's something even more important for the destiny of this country, and that is we choose. And we're the ones that have the loudest voice on a per capita basis on who will be the next president of the United States. And I want to thank all of you that have been part of this, and you're part of it again, but you choose the planks on the platform. When the candidates come and they tell you something about what they believe, say standing up for the Second Amendment, for example, we cheer them, and that's more likely to be a plank in the platform. And if they say something we don't like, we look at our watch, boo, hiss, or walk away. That's not likely to be a plank in the platform. And by the time that's all done, we've built the platform. And in Iowa, our values build the platform, and then we ship the presidential candidates off to New Hampshire, but they're writing on the platform we built here. So in 2016, when I walked into the Oval Office after Trump was inaugurated, I looked around and I thought, my gosh, we really did do that. We accomplished our objective, we took our values and we implanted them into a non-ideological candidate, and he became an ideological candidate, and he did his best to keep the promises that he had made here in Iowa. But it stuck through Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and beyond. That's the biggest reason why I say with confidence this is the most important congressional district in all of America, because our voice is the loudest in Iowa, and Iowa is the loudest in the country. And so if we've got somebody representing this district that doesn't represent you, that doesn't represent our values, somebody that's well to the left of center, somebody that will put $700 or $800 million in the pocket of the FBI to reward them for all their surveillance of the American citizens so they can have a brand new building, that's not a hard vote. Even if you're squishy and spineless, it's not a hard vote. But that's what's happened, and time after time. But here's the one that I want to just unload this, because this is my highest level of frustration, and it is of what's been going on. You heard from Senator Evans about the CO2 pipeline and eminent domain in our Constitution, and I chaired the Constitution Committee in Congress, and my oaths are about 12 of them, but the first one is all I needed to. And so this boondoggle of the CO2 pipeline that sets up pipelines to tie our ethanol plants together because they emit out of their biodigesters the largest mass of the purest form of CO2 known anywhere in the world. And if these folks like Bruce Rastetter and Summit can put pipelines together and to each one of these ethanol plants, they then control the supply of the CO2. And we, the taxpayers, pay them for it. And so they end up with a monopoly on one end and monopsony on the other end. And that's a word we don't know, and I didn't know it until a few weeks ago. But that's when you have only one customer. The only customer of Summit on this pipeline is the federal government. We, the people, the taxpayers that are $34 trillion in debt. But if he can build all of that, and we had, I know the guys that wrote the bill, and so my information that comes out of Washington is as direct as it could get. I just can't tell you their names. But they wrote the bill to take these carbon credits out in the debt ceiling bill and sometime in the summertime. And the debt ceiling bill was one that we said we're not going to let the debt ceiling go above a certain level. And in order to get there, they stripped all those credits out. And if those credits had been out and stayed out, we wouldn't be faced with this. These guys pack up their bats and go home, because it's all about the funding of those credits. Hundreds of billions of dollars in the end. Well, they had them stripped out. All of the Republicans, but 4, said, we'll vote for that bill to strip out the carbon credits. What a relief that would have been. But as this was on the bill that came up on a Thursday, I will tell you that 1 or more of the 4 Republican members of the Iowa congressional delegation got a phone call from Bruce Rastetter. That I am surmising, but there's nothing else that could explain it. And they were in, this is the part I know, they were in Kevin McCarthy's office at 2:30 in the morning, that Thursday morning when the bill was to come up, and I used the word virtually pounding on his desk to put those hundreds of billions of dollars of carbon credits back in that debt ceiling bill. Because why? They didn't lead on anything else, and they didn't do anything else with any kind of intensity. That's the first and only time they've taken a strong lead, virtually, I use the word virtually, pounding on McCarthy's desk saying we need those hundreds of billions of dollars to save Iowa ethanol. And the governor called the same night. Who was the one that pulled the strings on that? Puppeteer Bruce Rastetter. When you get to the point where you're paying taxes to fund carbon credits so you can enrich somebody like that, who happens to be the ownership of the subsidiary of the governors in the upper Midwest and the leadership within the legislatures, then it's beyond time to make the change. And he's never answered to that. He's going to need to answer to that. And I'm looking forward to the debates, because Kevin's brain works really good. It's well organized. I watch him organize thoughts and stream it out. This is going to be a lot of fun. And it's the right thing to do. And let's have all the energy we can get, because we're going up against the oligarchs. And they made an investment in your congressman, and they're going to defend that investment in your congressman, and so your current congressman. And that means they're going to be vigorous on this, and they will spend a lot of money. And we're going to raise as much money as we can. We're going to need all that we can, but we're going to need other things too. We're going to need grassroots. We're going to need people all the time. It's got to create the groundswell. And I'm hearing from people that say that's going to happen because they know the appetite out there is for a strong, principled, patriotic, noble individual, and we've got one right here. I've been looking for one for a long time, and I think he found me. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be the guy that introduces Kevin. Am I supposed to do that?
You've done a great job, but I can continue.
Well, okay. Here's what I will do. You want to wrap it up? Okay. I'll just do that then, because I'm almost there anyway. But I didn't know what the protocol was.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So anyway, I'm thrilled about this, and I'm not holding back on telling you that. I'll put all my energy into this thing, and I want to see the day that you and I and we all have a congressman we can be proud of, and when he takes his oath of office, he means it in supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States, but will focus down on getting this out-of-control federal spending done, that will focus like a laser on eliminating these carbon credits, that has his finger on the pulse of agriculture, that has a family network and a friend network that will fulfill him and fill him with the information he needs to get this done. And so I think that I'll take Providence if I can't find any other reason for it. I'm going with that one on this one. So I think serving us by Providence is Kevin Virgil.
Thank you very much. I think we have one more speaker, but we're going to let her go right after me. That's okay. All right, fantastic. Thank you very much to everybody for coming here tonight. I don't think Gaze has ever seen this much of a crowd as long as I've lived around here. How many people here, show of hands, who here did not know where Gaze was 24 hours ago? Fantastic. Yeah. It is, it's not the biggest town, but it's got character. And first of all, I really want to make a shout out and give thanks to Dave Hicks, where's Dave? And to the Gaze Co-op for hosting us here tonight. Thank you very much. Now, you're probably all asking, why are we all standing here in a town that has a population of, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 people? And there are three reasons for that. The first is obviously, like, what says Iowa more than a farmer's co-op? I mean, what a great venue to start a movement. And that's what we're doing here tonight. This isn't a campaign, we're going to start a movement. Like the gentleman who spoke before me, I'll talk about this, and I'm going to bring it home. The second reason we're here is because this is a very special place for me. As Steve was saying, my great-great-grandfather homesteaded the land about 400 yards that way 148 years ago. I'm the 5th generation of my family to call this land home. It's a very special place for me. And I couldn't think of a better place to have this talk tonight. And the third reason, which is really why we are all really here, is because of a group of gentlemen who live in the community here and have named their group after this town. Denise calls them the 6 a.m. boys, but I've gotten to know them as the Gaze Forum. And my dad is the ringleader. And every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m., these guys get together in my dad's barn. They say a prayer, and then they sit down and they talk about what's going on in the community and the world around them. And they try to make sense of this crazy world that we live in. And they take it a step beyond that because they also talk about how they can affect change in their community and what they can do to prepare for whatever the world may throw at them. The world needs more Gaze Forums. I would argue that every community could use one. So they've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years now, and whenever I've come home, I bring my kids, and we always sit in. We always make a point of arranging our travel so we can sit in. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about what's happening here, right here on the ground. Things like how the state DNR is quietly outbidding local farmers and local buyers when land comes up for auction. Or, as Steve so eloquently pointed out, how the carbon capture pipeline operators are trying to use their political connections and their investors to legally steal land from hardworking families here. These are things I've learned about, and I've met a lot of great people along the way. Every one of the speakers who spoke before me are people I met thanks to the Gays of Forum. I mean, I wouldn't be making this run tonight without that group. They've taught me about what's important back here. At the same time, I've learned a lot from my time outside the state, serving my country, living in Washington, D.C., where the political sausage is made, to understand how important this is and how important good representation is to all of you. So we're all here tonight because of those guys. And I think that brings up an important point, which is how important it is to stay focused on local politics. You know, I think that everybody in this room knows every presidential candidate who's running right now in intimate detail. You know their biographies, you know what they believe in, you probably know something about their families. But the sad truth is that we as individuals have almost no impact, or no possibility of impacting change at the national level. And like the corporate media has built a multi-billion-dollar industry around the presidential election cycle for a reason. It's nothing more than entertainment. They want you to follow that because they know there's absolutely nothing you can do to change it. And that's the unfortunate truth of life in a country of 330 million people, is that change will never happen from the top down. It's going to happen from the bottom up. From all of us as individuals and in small groups. I know that with all my heart, and that's why I'm so glad to see so many people out here tonight who do take an active role in governance in their communities and in the state and in the nation. I think it's just incredibly important. There's I think that the change is only going to happen from the bottom up, and sometimes it's disheartening to see how hard it is. And you know, we often struggle to find examples of how that can happen. I've got an example I want to share with you that I saw firsthand play out a couple of years ago. Who has heard of the school board in Loudoun County, Virginia? All right, so I lived just down the road from this when this all happened. For those of you who weren't around, this is what would happen. So when I moved to D.C. 20 years ago to serve, Loudoun County looked a lot like small town Iowa. A lot of small towns, a lot of family farms, fairly rural. And over the last 20 years, it's become one of the 10 wealthiest counties in America. And the politics have moved increasingly to the left. And that's most exemplified by just a lot of far-left activists who took over the school board there. And they pursued this insane ideology that really came to a head when they were not just permitting but encouraging LGBTQ education in their schools. And this all came to a head when a male student who identified as a woman assaulted two girls on two separate occasions in two different schools, and the school board covered it up. And when one of the victim's fathers went to a school board meeting to complain about this, one of the board members actually had the gall to call this man a liar to his face and claimed that it had never happened. Now, if you're that girl's father, what would you do in that situation? Yeah, I know exactly what I would have done. Which is what that guy did. He lost his mind. He ended up on the floor in handcuffs, being photographed by local media. He was ridiculed on the national stage for months. But this story has a happy ending, and here's why. It's because the other parents in that district were so furious about what happened. And they were, because they knew that what happened to that man's daughter could just as well have happened to theirs. And then from across the political spectrum, they were on a mission. They voted out that entire school board. And not only that, but it had even far more far-reaching impacts, because there was a governor's race happening in Virginia at that time. And the Democratic candidate for governor of Virginia, who was a longtime Clinton stooge, made the fatal error of trying to defend that school board. And he had been predicted to win in a landslide, and he ended up losing that race for that single issue alone. So, just taking a step back and looking at this, here's an example of how a single issue that one group of concerned parents became activists, got together, and they effected change, and that cascaded down to up to a point where it ended up changing the outcome of an important state election. And that's the kind of thing that can happen right here in Iowa. And it needs to happen. Because that chaos that everyone faced in Loudoun County is coming this way. You know, we're incredibly fortunate here in Western and Northwest Iowa, or Western Iowa in general, here in the 4th District, that, you know, we feel insulated from everything that's happening in New York City or in Los Angeles or wherever. And that may be the case right now, but that chaos is coming this way. And a lot of you probably already feel it. Now, I've never met Randy Feenstra, our current congressman. I've heard he's a good man. I'm sure he's a nice man. But we're at a point in our nation's history right now where the time for nice men running things is over. We don't need nice men serving in leadership roles in this country today. Nice men are what got us into this mess. When I graduated from high school, I graduated from South O'Brien High School in 1991. We were the world's sole superpower. We had unprecedented influence on the global stage. We had a roaring economy. Fast forward 30 years today, what do we have? We have rampant crime. We have a full-blown immigration crisis. We've got a gigantic budget deficit that's growing $1 trillion every 90 days. And we have a complete absence of leadership at the national level. That's all happening right now. And it's happening in real time, and everybody sees it coming. We don't need nice men anymore, or nice women. We need warriors and we need fighters in Congress and at the local and the state and the national level. And that's why I'm running for Congress. I'm a fighter. I'm going to fight for you. I know exactly how to be loud, be loyal to the people that I serve, the people that I represent, and I intend to do so when I take this office. I think that it's important to remember how far we've fallen from where we were just 10 years ago, and remember that we all need to work together to get out of this mess. Grab my notes. There's something else I want you to know about me, which is that I think it's important that everybody maintain some principles that they always look back on when they're that they can always just fall back on whenever they question what the right path is for them. I'm a firm believer that everybody should have principles. My son, for whom I'm grateful for leading us to the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, is a Boy Scout, and the Boy Scouts have a single principle they remember in every meeting, and it's their motto. Who remembers what it is?
I, Harlan, pledge to do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the law of the pack.
That is a strong Boy Scout salute. Thank you, sir. Sam, what's your motto? Excellent. Those are two great principles right there that everybody should remember in their daily life. I have 3 principles by which I intend to represent this district when I win this seat. The first principle is that I will uphold my oath to the Constitution, as Steve King just said. Sounds easy to do, but apparently it's not. From where I'm standing, any legislation that stands on the House floor that's up for vote will only get my support if it can be supported by the ideals of the Constitution. If it doesn't do that, it's a no from me. Does it put America first? If not, it's a no from me. There are so many examples of votes that we've seen from our current representative that failed that test. It sounds easy, but it's not. You know, Mr. Feenstra just voted to renew the FISA Accord, as Steve was talking about, which allows for the continuous warrantless surveillance of U.S. citizens without our knowledge, without our permission, without our consent. That is a blatant violation of the 4th Amendment, and I will never support that. I'll do everything I can to shut it down when I'm elected. Another issue is the carbon capture pipeline. Steve's a single-issue voter, as I have become. I think this is one of the most egregious violations of property rights and just basic rights that I've ever seen. And it's a core reason why I'm running for Congress. I can't believe this is happening in Northwest Iowa, where a politically connected company or a group of companies have the gall to try to enact eminent domain to forcibly take land from landowners for a purpose that has no public purpose whatsoever. They only seek to make gain for themselves. And I will do everything I can to shut that pipeline down once I'm elected. Second principle is the decentralization of government. I mean, this is so important at this point. We have a $34 trillion budget deficit. We have a federal bureaucracy that's completely out of control. The 10th Amendment says that any power not specifically delegated to the federal government should and must be pushed down to the states and to the people. I'm a firm believer in that. And we have not been living by that principle in a very long time. All you have to do, just for a barometer of how much we failed to adhere to the 10th Amendment as a country, is to look what's happening in Washington, D.C. 4 of the 10 wealthiest counties in the D.C. area now today, or of course the 10 wealthiest counties in the country, are in the immediate area surrounding Washington, D.C. right now. Loudoun County is just one of them. I lived in D.C. for a long time. My son was born there. There are no factories there. Nobody's building anything. And yet, they've accrued a staggering amount of wealth there, while the rest of America has seen a slow and steady degradation of their way of life and their economic well-being. Why is that? It's because Washington and the federal government that it houses have become a gigantic vacuum that sucks tax revenue out of the rest of us, out of our productive communities, in order to enrich the chosen few that have built a massive industry that puts it into their own pockets, and it needs to stop. If we're going to dig out of this enormous hole that we've dug ourselves as a nation over the past 30 years, we're going to have to cut the federal government in half. And then we're going to have to do it again. And I will do everything I can to support that as your elected member of Congress. The third principle that I want to mention is, again, it sounds fairly simple, but apparently it's hard to do in practice, and that's to only speak what is true and to be honest. Politics is a dirty game. I realize that. I am a true political outsider. I've never held office, never even thought about holding office until very recently. And I used to disparage politicians, as most of you probably are even doing in real time right now. But politics, I've been around enough to know, is the art of compromise. And oftentimes legislators have to hold their nose and vote for things that they don't want to support in the name of some greater good. And I have no doubt that that's going to happen in my journey as well. And I can't promise you that I will always vote the way that everybody in this room wants me to. In fact, I can practically guarantee that I won't. But I can promise you this. I will always tell you exactly why I voted the way I voted. I will stand in front of you nose to nose and explain myself. And I'll always make myself available to you. And that's something I don't think you have now. And that's something I will endeavor to always make available to you as the people who put me in office. And the last point I want to make here, before we open this up to our next speaker and our Q&A, is that I'm so glad to see all of you here tonight. We have activists here. As a country, we need activists. We have to move beyond this idea that our politicians are going to solve all of our problems for us. Everybody loves to dump on the people that we elect into office. We all like to talk about how politicians are corrupt, or they lie, or they never get things done. And oftentimes those complaints they're richly deserved. But when you look at the state of this country today, it's time for us all to look at each other and look in the mirror and realize that the only way we're going to make it out is if we all take a much more active role in the governance of our country, of our communities, of our state. We're not going to be able to rely on the candidate we hope to be elected president to solve all our problems. There's no one man or woman that can do that. Change is going to have to begin at home, and I need an army of activists to help me. If I'm going to succeed in Washington. I intend to be a loyal and loud conservative, upholding the Constitution and advocating for true conservative values when I'm elected. And I need to know that I've got an army of activists standing behind me, and I'm really glad to see all of you here tonight fulfilling that role. Thank you very much for being here. God bless America.
Kevin and I were talking before. He said I could say anything I wanted to say tonight. And Kevin and I were talking before. We've probably known each other for 45 years. I've always known him to be honest. I've always known him to take a challenge. Did you hear that he went to West Point? Did you hear that he was in the Airborne Division? Did you hear then he was promoted into the Regiment of Rangers? Then the CIA recruited him. Did you hear that? Honest? Yes. Up to a challenge? Yes. Military? Yes. Fight for the right thing? Yes. That's your guy. Not only that, like he's raised two pretty terrific kids. Yesterday morning at 5:45, I got to meet Evie. And Evie had with her a little notebook. Evie? Do you want to speak? She had laid out a platform for her father, which she shared at me at 5:45 a.m. yesterday morning. Evie? Go.
Hi, my name is Evie, and this speech I have today is called Helping Dad Change the World. Here's a list of laws that we should keep. Making money, food and water, mortgage, and car repair bills. Why we need to keep car repair bills is because if someone fixes your car, then you're happy, and they're there and they don't get paid for working hard on your car. Some laws that we don't really need is human traffic, taxes, schools for parents to decide, medicine should be left up to doctors. Medicine should be left up to doctors because if you need something strong, the government can just walk in and say no. What if you really need it? Let's make this happen for the world to be a better and safer place by voting for Kevin Virgil for Congress.
Dad make this world a better place. Kevin Virgil for Congress. Isn't that fabulous? Thank you, Evie. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Sam. Now's the time for Q&A. Anybody have questions for Kevin?
I'll start out first because I remember when Randy Feenstra was running for Congress in the 4th District, he said that he would serve no longer than 12 years. So I'm kind of curious, what do you feel is a legitimate term of office for a congressman?
I think term limits are a fantastic idea. I agree with the congressman on that. I think that, in my mind, I think that you can serve 2 terms in the Senate and 5 terms in the House, and have a significant impact. And not only that, look at the congressman here. He served 9 terms. He's made himself completely available to me so I can learn from him, and he can be my mentor. I've got 18 years of institutional knowledge there on day 1 that I could tap into. We don't need congressmen and senators serving for 40 years like we do right now. We all know there's only one reason why they are. It's because they can enrich themselves and they love the power. That's not who we need. We don't need sociopaths in Congress. We need public servants.
Kevin, I'd like for you to explain your views on the unborn, particularly the unborn and the elderly. Congressman King had a stellar record in that area, and I think if you can match that, you're my guy.
So just to confirm my record on my opinion on protecting the elderly.
Unborn.
Oh, the unborn. Yeah, 100%. No, I'm a lockstep with the congressman on this one. Firm believer in the right to life. You know, from the establishment of the heartbeat and full stop.
Thank you, Kevin. My wife and I have been married 42 years. We have 4 kids, 17 grandkids. Our motto has been, and I hope it's yours, do what is right, not what is easy. Take that and run, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question and then a comment. What's your position on government subsidies to any individual or entity?
To ensure correct, government subsidies to any individual or entity.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I'd like to see them stop. I mean, I think that there's a spectrum of reasons to keep a market active. Do I think that it's a great idea to provide subsidies for 20 years to the wind power industry to keep an unprofitable power source active? No, I don't. What exactly do you have in mind?
Here's my suggestion to you for the first legislation you introduce. Any elected official who votes in favor of deficit spending shall be required to pledge all of their personal assets as collateral towards the debt created by the legislation. Period. There's a second sentence. Within 1 year of this past legislation, if the debt is not created in full, paid in full, then all of the pledged assets shall be seized and sold at auction to the highest bidder, with all the proceeds going to pay down the debt. I just balanced the budget in 2 sentences.
Very nice. Very nice. I will tell you this. I wasn't kidding when I told you about my views on the federal deficit and the bloat of our federal government. When you consider the fact that our 4th highest outlay for federal spending right now is service on the debt. It's interest payments. If that outpaces the top 3 expenditures, which are Social Security, healthcare, and defense, like we're done as a country. And that day's coming, and it's coming sooner than we all think. We do have to take drastic measures. I completely agree with that. And I think there are definitely ways in which we can narrow and eventually close that deficit gap and balance the budget. And then we got to figure out how we're going to climb out of that $34 trillion hole. But I will 100% support a government shutdown if that's what it requires to balance the budget.
Hello, it's so good to see you here, and we've been waiting for someone for a long time. Well, since the day after a primary a couple years ago. So thank you very much. We have prisoners in prison right now because of the supposed January 6th insurrection. First of all, how would you have handled that day? And secondly, how quickly can you help free them?
How would I handle that day as a congressman?
Yes.
I mean, I would have been advocating for the release on day 1. I think that I really like that. I believe it's Vivek who's confirmed that he would issue a pardon for those prisoners on day 1. Look, the more we learn about the situation, you know, with the tapes that were released when the new speaker took office, the more convoluted and the more distorted this story gets, right? It's becoming increasingly clear that what we were told happened, 3 years ago is not what happened. And we have people who've been rotting in jail for a year and a half now without trial, without due process. And I think it's an absolute disgrace. When I'm elected, I I desperately hope that this situation has been resolved by then, but if it's not, I will go to the House floor and call as forcibly as I possibly can for those individuals to be pardoned. It's been long enough.
I want to know what we should be doing to get you elected, basically. What are your expectations? What do you need?
Like I said, I need activists. I need people. We need to build an army here. We need, in the immediate term, we need people in every county to sign those signature sheets that are being passed around right now. We need people to get the word out. Look, I'm under no illusion as to the magnitude of the task here. I'm sure my name recognition is polling about 1%. Yeah, maybe 0.5%. Yeah, exactly. And I've got, roughly $2 million less in cash in the campaign bank account. Speaking of which, if anybody feels the need to donate, you see Mr. Trent back there has a bowl ready to accept any checks that you wish to give. Just make them out to Virgil for Congress, and we would be extremely grateful. We need advocates and activists just getting out the word and talking about me, talking about the people in this room, and what we need to do.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Virgil. Two questions. One was you mentioned that we needed to cut the federal government in half and then do it again. So I don't know, where would you start? And then second one, just some quick comments about the current border situation we have. Thanks.
Oh boy, I have to talk about this for a while. I ran a business for the last few years. We build artificial intelligence-enabled software, primarily for the private sector, but also for the Air Force and other units within the DoD. And I've been saying this for a while now: is that you could cut the DoD civilian workforce in half tomorrow, and it would run better. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. There is so much bloat in the federal government right now. We in the Army used to call it the self-licking ice cream cone, and I think we could cut the federal workforce in half tomorrow, and I don't think anybody here in this room would see any discernible impact in their day-to-day life, other than the fact they might be paying a bit less in taxes next year. And I think that would be a great way to start. I have no problem finding ways to cut the federal budget. We start with the head count, and then the entitlements, and then entire departments. Do we need a Department of Education? No. No, we do not. Second question was about the border. What are my thoughts on it? I think it's an absolute travesty. It's the most shocking and incredible thing. I never thought I'd see it. We have an administration right now that seems dead set and they're doing everything they can to destroy this country and its culture. I think I'm hearing we're currently letting in somewhere between 250,000 migrants a month. And these aren't just families looking for a better life coming up from Guatemala. These are military-age males coming from, last I heard, it was over 170 countries around the world. I don't know how many Hamas and Hezbollah sleepers are in that group, but I can guarantee you that it's not zero. We need to lock the border down immediately. And I just saw news, Congressman Gates was down at the border in Eagle Pass, I believe, a couple days ago, and was reporting that the state of Texas, I believe it was the National Guard, but somebody in the state of Texas was putting up border fence, and the U.S. Border Patrol, under the direction of the Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, was cutting it down. So here you've got a state that's actively trying to protect its border, and the federal government is coming in and countermanding that order. I put this out on my Twitter account, now X, and I want to talk a little bit about that more in a second, but yeah, I said this explicitly yesterday, that when I'm elected to Congress, one of the first things I do is I'm going to stand on the House floor and and I'm going to demand that Secretary Mayorkas be arrested and tried for treason, because that's what this is. Ronnie, I wanted to mention one other point too. I am a First Amendment absolutist. You know, oftentimes you hear people say they believe in free speech, but then they give you an exception. If anybody says the word "but" after the phrase "I believe in free speech," they don't believe in free speech. And I think for a long time, this country has had it's been incredibly damaged by institutional level forces that want to suppress our free speech and our ability to receive information. Getting back to the January 6th protests, you know, there's been an active effort at the highest level to conceal information that probably would have mitigated, if not completely exonerated, those people that went into the Capitol that day. You know, there have been allegations that have emerged about former President Obama back in like the late 90s that had we known about those things, maybe they're true, maybe they're not, but I can guarantee everybody, not just in this room, but around the country, would have had a very different thought process about the 2008 election. And we never had that opportunity because the media colluded with the Obama campaign to suppress all that information from us. We've been dealing with this for a long time, and it's been getting worse, and the first ray of light we've seen come through this, and I'm not here to plug any particular business or any social media account, platform, but if you're not on X, formerly known as Twitter now, you should get on there. Because to my knowledge, it's the only news outlet right now where you can actually get unfiltered information regarding what's happening in the world. I plan to use it extensively, and if you want to follow me in my campaign, or Vivek's or Trump's or frankly anybody's campaign, you should take a hard look at it.
I'm from Crawford County, and I'm so excited to have a candidate that's going to challenge our current congressperson. But I realize you're a hard worker. You wouldn't have gotten where you have without being a hard worker. I also believe in retail politics, so I want you to be so visible and come around. You only have 6 months before the primary challenge is going to be determined. So I'm going to invite you to Crawford County next Thursday evening, our County Central Committee meeting. We're going to have some visitors from the UK and from Australia there that night, but I would love to introduce you to our Central Committee. They're looking forward to it too.
I'd love to be there. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question?
Letting me off easy.
Okay.
Here we go.
I just want to make sure this is clear, because I just want to make sure people don't take this wrong way. When you said you were against abortion altogether, do you think there should be some exceptions to that? For instance, I know it's less than 1%, but if the mother's life is in danger.
Look, there are any number of scenarios that you could throw at somebody to ask that question. I think in that situation, you need to take a hard look at the mother and ask her what she wants to do.
Next scenario. And the only reason I'm asking this is because I asked this to a state representative about a year ago. Next scenario. Unfortunately, a teenage girl gets raped. And worst case scenario, it's a family member.
It's not the baby's fault.
Okay, next question. This one has to deal with, unfortunately I've seen this happen, and unfortunately there's no law in Iowa or any other state that we found that actually stops this from basically happening. Would you be okay with a certain law in the United States which prevents roughly over 50% of the parents possibly being able to legally kidnap their child from a state to another state? Want an example?
Please.
Okay. So 2 people in, we'll just say Minnesota, have a child. They're never married. Unfortunately, under the current law in Minnesota and Iowa, that parent or a parent in Minnesota can take that child and move to Iowa. When that person moves to Iowa, they can legally ask for child support. When that occurs, the child support recovery system in Iowa contacts Minnesota. Minnesota subpoenas that person to court. But since the child does not live in Minnesota anymore, the only thing the Minnesota court can establish is child support and health insurance. If that parent in Minnesota doesn't have the financial means to go through an Iowa court system, they're basically out of luck. There's nothing they can do. That, in my mind, that's parental kidnapping.
Now, look, what you're describing is an incredibly difficult situation for the parents stuck in Minnesota. Yeah, I don't, like, as painful as that is, and as heart-wrenching as that must be, what we're talking about is an edge case, right? And I think it's very difficult to start talking about enacting federal laws that have an impact for such a low probability number of cases. I'm not trying to dodge your question. I just look. We've got a system whereby the states are supposed to deal with each other, right? And I think that's in the case you're mentioning. I think that's where we're going to have to leave it. I mean, I think there's a better way to. There may be better ways to petition the state level authorities in Minnesota and Iowa to handle that case, but I don't think legislation at the federal government is the answer.
It's unconstitutional, according to Roe v. Wade. There's powers that are not enumerated in the Constitution have to be given to the state. Well, abortion is not.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There's just no way the federal government controls one way or the other.
Yeah, you're right.
Anybody else?
I've got a big voice, I don't need the mic. But with your military and CIA background, I'm curious, what are your thoughts about our future involvement both in Ukraine and in the situation that exists now in Gaza and Israel?
Oh boy, well, I could talk about the first one all night, having spent a lot of time in that part in Eastern Europe. My solution to the Ukraine issue is to resolve it as fast as possible and stop the bloodshed. We have a neocon wing of the Uniparty, and it constitutes both Republicans and Democrats that have enormous financial incentives to carry this war on. Right? Nikki Haley's out there banging the war drum right now, telling her voters that we only need to allocate 5% of the defense budget to win this war and create regime change for Putin. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Sanctions aren't working with Russia. You know, we actually started in a lot of ways, and you know, the corporate media doesn't want to talk about this, but you know, we effectively goaded the Ukrainian government into this war a year and a half ago. You know, the Zelensky government was, according to a report that was just published by a senior German diplomat who was in the room, the Zelensky government was prepared to strike a deal with Putin. The reason that the Russian government was aggressively moving toward the border, preparing to invade Ukraine, was because Ukrainian membership in NATO was an absolute red flag for Russia. Absolute red flag. Ukraine is Russia's breadbasket. It's the conduit by which they sell oil and gas to Europe. That they were not going to stand with having Ukraine become a NATO member. Think about our own history when Khrushchev put nuclear missiles in Cuba in the early 60s, and how close we came to a nuclear exchange with Russia because of that. And those were nuclear missiles that were 100 miles off the coast of Key West, right? I mean, you can't blame Putin for not wanting a NATO expansion into what, until 30 years ago, was a Soviet country. So I'm no Putin fan. It's not like I'm not a fan of any other country except the United States, right? I'm a firm believer that, you know, like I think de Gaulle once said, countries shouldn't have friends; they should have interests. And our interest as a country is not to keep giving billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. It's to keep it right here at home and make the situation better. Your second question on Hamas and Israel, look, I mean, there is not a person in this room or probably anywhere in the world who can give you a 30-second answer to solve that problem, right? I mean, here we are, we have this intractable issue with two sides, one of which has roughly 2 billion Muslims around the world, the other which has the Jewish state and their right to exist. It's intractable. And do I think that Israel has a right to defend itself? 100% yes. They have a right to exist? Yes. Should they track down those terrorists that attacked and killed women and children on October 7th? 100%. They have every right to do that. At the same time, do I also believe that the Palestinians have a right to be pissed off that they lost their homeland in the late 1940s? Yes, they do. And I think that do I think that they have been mistreated by the Israelis over the last 70 years? By continuing southern expansion into the occupied territories? Yes, I do. Do I think it's right or wrong? I don't have an opinion on that. I'm saying they have a right to be upset. History is full of examples of people who've been wrong, countries and peoples who've been wronged by their neighbors. It's just the way it is, and it's not our fight.
There will never be peace in that part of the world as long as neither side will accept Christ as the Messiah. Question for you. The WHO, that I would refer to as the World Homicide Organization, we have a very key issue happening with them on their mandate later this month. The most basic constitutional right you could ever have is to decide what goes in your body, and yet we have communist dictation on both sides of the political aisle funding the violation of people's bodies with injections. What's your position, please?
I couldn't be more opposed to it. I would prefer that we not recognize the authority of the WHO or frankly be treated to it. I think that the UN had a place immediately after World War II and it's lost its way. The fact that we're funding an outright majority of its budget is a travesty to me. We were talking about ways to cut the federal budget. There's a great way. We're funding that overpriced high-rise headquarters in New York City. I think we could safely do away with that. As far as vaccine mandates go, I've been opposed to it since day one. I did not get vaccinated. I'll be full disclosure. I never did. Proud to admit that. Actually, that's half true. I've received one vaccination because my children's mother really wanted them to get vaccinated. I did the first shot with them out of solidarity, but I didn't pursue any more than that. I've been opposed to vaccine mandates from the beginning. I completely agree with you that it's a choice. I think we are coming out of the other end of what's probably one of the largest mass delusions in history with COVID, funded and bankrolled in large part by the pharmaceutical industry. And what's shocking to me is how the national conversation seems to have tilted toward, hey, we just don't want to talk about it. And I think we do need to talk about it. And I think if we have a change in government, if we get a clear Republican majority next year, and God willing, we get a Republican president, I think we need to have I think we need to have arrests. I think we need to have hearings. I think we need to find out what went wrong and make sure it never happens again.
We have COVID is 100% manufactured epidemic from start to finish, and anybody that answers that either doesn't want to or they haven't looked at the evidence that's glaring. Mr. Trump signed an executive order on September 19 of 2019 that laid the groundwork for warp speed development of the most dangerous injection that's ever been administered to the citizens of the world, and he still thinks it's a good thing. I want to know why. I'm going to try and ask him that question tomorrow afternoon, Mr. Senator. I doubt that I'll get the chance, and I know he won't answer
administration created $8 trillion of new debt in 4 years, and his emergency authorization that he signed that turned our country over to psychopath bureaucrats that destroyed countless small businesses and resulted in the greatest transfer of wealth from the middle class to the elite in the history of our country. We got a damn problem. It ain't Republican, it ain't Democrat. We have to have constitutionalists in this country.
That's right. I agree. I agree with you. And I hope you asked that question.
I'm going to bring up abortion again. In my opinion, we're all being drawn away from the problem. Abortion was ruled when they were ruled against Roe versus Wade. That kicks abortion down to the state level. So Lynn and Zach are the two guys that are fighting abortion for us now. You, as a U.S. Congressman, will not have jurisdiction to rule on abortion. And every guy that's running for president or gal, they all try to drag him into this abortion fight. And all they have to say is, hey, this is a state level issue. Take it up with your state representatives and your governor.
Correct.
One thing I would like to come back from my grandchildren listening to yours. My grandchildren come to me, well, my granddaughter and my grandson. But my granddaughter come to me and said, Grandma, I don't want to do my homework on the computer. I'm thinking technology has got to be taken out of the classroom. It can be in the offices. But, yeah, they don't. I asked her why doesn't she want to do it on the computer. She says, we can do it faster with pencil and paper. So, and then my grandsons growing up to be men, they're being, well, they say, Grandma, they're just dumbing us down to where they're not being given the opportunity to flourish into men and women. Instead, they're distorting it. So I'm coming back to my grandchildren. We need to save the grandchildren.
Good. No, I agree with a lot of what you said. If I can just comment really quickly. If you ever read anything about what parents who work in all the big Silicon Valley companies said, you know, Apple, Facebook, whatever, overwhelmingly, those parents who work in those companies are generally very strict about how much screen time their kids receive because they know the destructive power of those devices. I mean, I got a 12-year-old son. I battle this every day, as he well knows. No, in all seriousness, it's a double-edged sword. Look, do I think that we should just go back to pencil and paper in the classroom? No, ma'am, I don't. I think we as a society right now need to prepare our children for the future. That future is going to require them to learn how to code, to learn how to interact with technology. And I think we should do that to the fullest extent of our abilities and our resources. At the same time, I think that a lot of the problems we're facing right now with kids and devices is a parenting issue. Yeah, look, we're all busy, right? We're all two-career families now. I have the same problem. I struggle with the same issues that you do. But I think that the best possible way that we can deal with the perils of overexposing our kids to technology is to enforce that discipline. And that discipline, by the way, is something that's all too rare with parenting these days.
My question is two different parts. First off, one of the biggest things that we need to do is revive our economy, and part of the problem with that is all our supply lines starting in China. Do we have anything, this also ties into defense, or given any ideas on how to help repatriate some of these industries, especially the ones that are massively tied to defense, like steel, chemical production, semiconductor production? As I'm sure you're aware, we have weapon systems we've given to Ukraine we cannot use anymore, and it's only getting worse.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that, look, a lot of supply chain issues that we were facing with China, like I think we were at a point in, even 4 years ago, 5 years ago, where we were outsourcing all of our production. We were no longer a manufacturing economy. We were a service economy just 5 years ago. And I think COVID, for all of its downside, in a lot of ways, it woke us up to some things, right? We were massively overexposed to the Chinese market. We suddenly discovered we couldn't produce simple pharmaceuticals here in the United States, let alone semiconductors, which we're going to struggle with that one for the next 10 years, right? That's, one thing I will give the Biden administration credit for is they were throwing a lot of money at trying to crack the semiconductor problem. But look, I think there needs to be a nationwide, like a Marshall Plan to onshore manufacturing again. Like we have to return to being a manufacturing economy. We've got the brains here, we've got the manpower. I think that's an absolute priority for us as a country.
Any more questions?
I have one more closing question. Can you sum up for me in your own mind, what are the major differences between you and Beanstra?
Where do I start? Let's start with ideological, right? Which is, I think, look, we're in, by a long shot, the most conservative district in Iowa, and one of the most conservative in the nation. And if you look at the current congressman's voting record, it does not indicate somebody who's voting as a conservative, right? You look at like what Steve was talking earlier regarding his push to increase carbon credits for selected companies like Summit Carbon Solutions, effectively taking tax revenue and redistributing it to a few chosen winners. That's not the action of a conservative. Voting to extend the FISA court and warrantless surveillance on U.S. citizens without their consent or even without their knowledge. That's not the vote of somebody I would consider to be a true conservative. Voting to fund the UN Global Health Initiative, $50 billion. Voting to send $40 billion to Ukraine, not the actions of a true conservative. I think I could go on and on, but there's a long list. But I think the fundamental difference really comes down to character. I said earlier, I'm sure he's a good man. I'm sure he's a fine family man. I've heard he's very strong with his faith, and I'm glad to hear that. But I don't think he's accountable. I don't think he really spends time out here talking to people. Look, I don't know how many people are here tonight. It has to be over 100. And we put the word out for this event with 2 days notice in a town that half the people here hadn't heard of until 24 hours ago. So a lot of people here must agree with me, and I suspect there are even more that aren't here tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
He doesn't deliver.
Well, let's, I plan to change that, so thank you. So he delivers for the FBI.
So, wonderful questions. Mark Cody?
I just kind of wanted to finish on a little lighter note. What is your favorite color of tractor? Farmall red?
I'll tell you, my favorite color is a particular brand of yellow that goes with Minneapolis Moline. Yeah. No, for those who don't know, my dad has how many Minneapolis Moline tractors in the garage these days? Just somewhere between like 12 and 15. I grew up around. Sorry, Farmall. There are no Farmalls on the Virgil farm.
I know Kevin's going to be here tonight. Do you see why we're excited to have Kevin run? As we close, I'm going to encourage you. There's a box back there to put donations, Virgil for Congress. Write your name and the amount you give. It's important that we keep track of that. There's also petitions to sign. We need numbers in every county, so they're back there. Also Lynn and Zach Deacon And I'm sure they would accept your contributions as well. It means so much that you came. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your good questions. I'm sure Kevin is here or is available. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman King. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Denise.